Good morning, Bethel Baptist Church, and welcome back to another day of the Daily Thoughts. So great to be able to do another day. Sorry I'm a bit late. I'm doing a youth ministry conference, which has been great so far, but we're on a break, so I'm able to come and share this with you today. I'm going to read from Acts 25. So we've only got a few chapters left, I think, this week, next week, and then 2 days the week after. And then we have gone through the whole book of Acts together. 28 chapters of, yeah, fantastic things, loads of stuff happening. People in prison all the time, which I'm going to be looking at today. Acts 25, verses 1 to 12, I'm going to read. So I'm going to read them now for you. 3 days after arriving in the province, Festus went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and the Jewish leaders appeared before him and presented the charges against Paul. They requested Festus, as a favour to them, to have Paul transferred to Jerusalem, for they were preparing an ambush to kill him along the way. Festus answered, Paul is being held at Caesarea, and I myself am going there soon. Let some of your leaders come with me, and if the man has done anything wrong, they can press charges against him there. After spending 8 or 10 days with them, Festus went down to Caesarea. The next day he convened the court and ordered that Paul be brought before him. When Paul came in, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood round him. They brought many serious charges against him, but they could not prove them. Then Paul made his defense. I have done nothing wrong against the Jewish law, or against the temple, or against Caesar. Festus, wishing to do Jews a favour, said to Paul, Are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and stand trial before me there on these charges? Paul answered, I am now standing before Caesar's courts, where I ought to be tried. I have not done anything wrong to the Jews, as you yourself know very well. If, however, I am guilty of doing anything deserving death, I do not refuse to die. But if the charges brought against me by these Jews are not true, no one has the right to hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar. After Festus had conferred with his council, he declared, You have appealed to Caesar. To Caesar you will go. Again, last week I read about Paul being in the prison, and I think a few weeks back as well, I read about Paul being in captivity, being in lockdown, and this chapter is no different. We see again that Paul is continually being charged or trying to be charged with doing something wrong, when in reality all he's doing is preaching the gospel. But after reading about Paul so many times, about him being in lockdown in prison, I just really sense his perseverance, like how committed he was to the cause, how committed he was to spreading the gospel, because the amount of times he went to prison and they wanted to kill him, yet he carried on preaching the gospel and trying to share the good news of Jesus to every single person. And many a times he could have died, many a times he could have spent the rest of his life in prison, yet he didn't, and eventually got out and he continued to preach the gospel. But then again, he goes back into prison. So yeah, his perseverance and his willingness to just keep going is a model for us really today. Like, when things go wrong, how do we respond? Do we continue to be that passionate Bible believing Christian, or do we sort of edge towards a different route? Do we do a Paul and just continue to do the best that we can spreading the gospel, or when things get tough, how do we respond? And is a question for me to think about, because when things get really tough, how do I respond? Am I still as passionate as I've ever been? Am I still as willing as I ever have been to be a Christian, to do the life that God has called me to do? So yeah, I guess my thought is perseverance, but not just from these few verses I read, but from the whole book of Acts, how I see Paul continuing to go into places and to preach the gospel, even when he knows he's going to get thrown into prison and potentially die. but he knew that his life was worth more than just being a person who was gonna stop preaching the gospel. His life was radically transformed, and he knew that he had to show and tell people about what Jesus had done for him, and that's what he did, regardless of what was going to happen to him. He knew that his life was so much more, and your life is so much more. My life is so much more. Tell people about Jesus and what he did for you, because we were never the same after he did something in our lives. So let's share the gospel. Let's be a Paul, even when things get rough. Let's do our best to share the gospel. And that's my thought today, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you're enjoying these thoughts. Like I said, we've only got a couple of weeks left, and then we are finished on the book of Acts. So yeah, I hope you're enjoying, and I hope you tune in to the rest of the week's one. So I'll see you probably on Sunday. So have a great week, and I'll see you all soon.